To prove this argument successfully, there are a few danger spots to watch out for. The first, of course, is that in premise 3, the main operator is a horseshoe. That is to say, premise 3 is not a generalization, but a truth functional sentence. And so what that means is we can't EI or even UI line 3, at least not directly. What we will be able to do, because it is a horseshoe, though, is, for example, maybe use it with modus ponens or modus tollens, implication, so on and so forth, all those other horseshoe rules. Another danger spot to watch out for is to avoid the temptation to try to modus ponens when you don't have the exact matching pieces. And the shortest explanation of why you can't do that is because at line 1, the main operator is the universal quantifier, not the horseshoe. Modus ponens, of course, requires a horseshoe in one of its ingredients. And because the horseshoe is bound within the scope of that universal quantifier, because of these parentheses, then we don't have that conditional, at least not yet. But of course, we can UI lines 1 and 2, then use modus ponens. All right, so what other tactical or strategic observations we can make? Notice that the consequent of line 3 is the universal quantification, everything is a J. So if we could just derive that everything is a J, then of course we can derive that K is a J too. So in other words, we want, or we think we want at least, we want that consequent. And then now working backwards a little bit, if we want the consequent of a conditional, then we should look for the antecedent on a line by itself. And now we have connected up our earlier observation with this last one, right? Because if we do instantiate lines 1 and 2 and then use modus ponens, what we're getting, of course, is a sentence that looks like this, which we can then generalize to get a sentence that looks like this. And so now we're ready to construct the proof. So our first step is to use universal instantiation on line 1. We are free to use any instantial letter at this point because UI doesn't have any restrictions on it. You may be wondering why I don't instantiate with K. I can actually, but there's also no need to. And the reason there's no need to is because we're going to end up generalizing again over the constant that appears early on in the proof. I also want a UI on line 2. I am going to use the same instantial letter that I used in line 4, of course, because I want to be able to use modus ponens on lines 4 and 5. And now that I've gotten that A is a B, we want to generalize. And we wanted this generalization so that we could derive the consequent of line 3, 3 and 7 modus ponens. And of course, we wanted that consequent in order to derive an instance, which is our desired conclusion.